Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to a special Saturday morning edition. A little breaking news here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. Do us a solid. Hop on in and join us in the Specs chat. And while you do so, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, get notifications. Do all of it. Just micromanage all of it. We're just boom, boom, boom. We're joining you this morning because Steve Sarkisian and a number of his key assistants have officially – well, I won't say it's official yet. We've had a look at what the proposed increased salaries and contract extensions will be for Steve Sarkisian and a number of key assistants. Anwar, I'll just let you take over, starting with Sarkisian. He's now in the $10 million a year club.
I mean, love that money. I mean, you see what what he's going to get paid, $10 million a year. And the other part, Catch, I mean, $10 million a year through the 2030 season. So he gonna be around for a while, Catch. Like Sark ain't going anywhere. Increase of 78%. Catch. That's a hell. When most people are happy to get 3% raises or 5% raises, my man's getting 78%. I think for Texas and for Sark, I mean, the obvious things, Catch, obviously are you've locked up your guy for a long period of time. You're not going to have to worry about him going anywhere. He's getting paid market rate for what he does. And look, if he continues on the concess, you just continue to rip it up every year and continue going from there. But I mean, it's a win for everybody involved. It's a win for Texas because it's the payoff for their investment. It's clearly a win for Sark. It's a hell of a win in recruiting, right? Just to be able to say, man, this is, I'm going to be around for a really, really long time. And yes, K-Drag, we all need a Jimmy Sexton in our life who can get us that kind of raise.
Yes, Chris, that's a pay bump. Before we get to the assistant coaches, a little bit on the Sarkisian deal. Look, we were already talking going into last year 3 of a 6-year deal. At what point do you do an extension? How long is the extension? They got a really good deal for Sarkisian early on. Part of the reason why he gets a 78% increase is because he was making in the 5s.
Yeah.
And you look, Texas hired him when he was a coordinator, so they got a real sweetheart deal. They weren't going after somebody that was setting the market. But kind of what happened to them in this offseason is that the Alabama job opened up. We saw the Washington. Jimmy Sexton had his hands in kind of everything going on in college football. So to pay him $9 million a year would have been to pay him kind of mid-range SEC. To pay him $10 million a year plus puts him in the top 3 for SEC coaches. It rewards him for what obviously he did this past season with getting the Longhorns to the playoff. And with regards to years, I think what's really interesting is they end up adding 4 years to the contract. So like you said, essentially now he's working on if we just look at this as a brand new deal, it's a 7-year contract for Sarkisian. He'll make $100,000 more every season that follows. So it starts at 10.3. It will go up $100,000 every year up until what they're counting as year 10, but would be the 7th year remaining on this deal. The high point of that will be $10.9 million. And Anwar, you're right. If they ever want to give him an increase, they can. I don't think they'll be worried about years for a really long time. 7 years is a long time. Like you said, that takes him all the way through the rest of the decade. Sexton has to feel good. Sarkisian has to feel good. He's now among the nation's elite, but he's also not the highest paid coach in either the SEC or college football. So the Longhorns can feel like, you know what, in 2 or 3 years, if these numbers don't change, they'll probably feel like they've got him on a good contract, that
Yeah.
The SEC salaries will continue to go up. If his just kind of stays where it is, they'll probably end up having him in the top 6, but nowhere near the top 1 or 2. I think everybody can kind of live with where they are right now.
Yeah, catch. I mean, look, I was looking it up, and like, first of all, if you, I think it was just not too long ago, at the end of last year, Lane Kiffin got a salary extension, right? And his base salary was $9 million a year, based off of what he did. So if you're Sark, yeah, you're like, well, Lane gets 9, I deserve 10, right? And that's real. It's just real simple math at that point. It was easy to do. To your point, like we said, like, hey, 9 million. If you're Sexton, you're like, man, Lane ain't gone to the college football playoffs, so you gonna have to give my man at least $1 million more, and then of course tack on the years. So it ends up being, like you said, they didn't go crazy. Now, I know that's all relative when we're talking about $10 million a year. We're just talking about that ballpark. They didn't go crazy. They didn't outbid themselves. They didn't give them like $14 million. They didn't get ridiculous with it. But it did something that is really good, really manageable. For them. And like I said, I think the good part for you, what you said is true, Catch. Like, they took a risk on Sark. Right. And everything was all about, hey, man, if you do what you need to do, we'll take care of you. But right now, like, hey, you're a coordinator. There's some unknowns here. We give it some time. And, after year 1, there was some like, hey, I don't know. Let's see what happens. Year 2. Yeah, I'm not going to do it on a Saturday, Catch, but it was like, Sonny Dykes was out there before, and like, I don't know. And now it's like happy days are here again. So I think it ends up being a payoff for all involved. He becomes the brand, the face of everyone going forward, and feeling pretty good going into the SEC. And now again, Catch, if you're Sark and you're going into Holmes and you're recruiting, you go and say, look at what just happened. Saban is gone. Harbaugh's gone. Alabama's got a new coach, and we don't know what to expect from there. Why are you going to go anywhere else? Like this, we got everything you need. We got the SEC, we got NIL, we got stadium, like everything that you would want. Come and get a good education, of course, at the University of Texas. And by the way, I'm going to be here for a long period of time. Your coordinators are going to be here for a long period of time. You're not going to have to worry about much. Why would you go anywhere else?
I'm looking at it right now. So Dabo's the highest paid coach in the country.
Okay.
God love him. Hey, good job, Dabo. And I'm assuming Jimmy Sexton is his agent too. Saban was number 1. He was making 11.4 last year in his final season. Then comes Dabo. Kirby Smart makes 10.7. Ryan Day makes 10.27. Sark comes in at 10.3. I think that may make him the 3rd highest coach in the country right now. Now, I don't know what Kellen DeBoer's salary is. All that's been reported on him so far is that he's going to make at least $10 million. So we'll see what that final number comes in at once these things go in front of the Alabama Board of Regents and whoever it is that approves the Alabama deal. But yeah, man, if you're Sark, you're feeling real good. And I think the point you made is the obvious one, Anwar. The market was already set. When it came time to pay Sark, you had to look at all of the salaries in the SEC. And you had Brian Kelly making 9.975. Jimbo's making 9.1. Mark Stoops is making 9 at Kentucky. Heupel's making 9 at Tennessee. Lane Kiffin making 9 at Mississippi. So he's got to be paid more than all those dudes.
All those dudes, man. All those dudes.
All of them. Jimmy Sexton's not doing his job if Sark doesn't make as much money as Brian Kelly at LSU, considering the movement that's transpired this offseason and the fact that Sark's coming off of a playoff bid. LSU and Kelly paid him off of what he did at Notre Dame. But based on what he's done at LSU so far, Sarkisian has to be above that. And look, there's no reason to even debate the Mark Stoops and the Josh Heupels of the world. This is the going rate. So he was going to get 10. They start him off at 10-3. He's got bonuses in there that can make that more. All things being equal, like I think that everybody in this deal for Texas, his agent, Sarkisian, all of these, I think that everybody comes away feeling like they got a good deal. Everybody's happy. And now they can put the Sarkisian discussion to bed probably for a while. I can't imagine that anything would change in the next couple of years. So now the conversation gets to be about his assistants on kind of an annual basis. And oh, by the way, there's some news on that as well.
So all those guys get his coordinators get extensions, and those guys are now. Let me see. I'll go ahead and pull that one up for us. Those guys are now. Let me take us off the screen for a second. Those guys get 1 year extensions to 2026. And through the 2026 season. Jeff Banks, Kyle Flood, Pete K, all those dudes are now making pretty good money, And by the way, people got to understand, because I just saw this on Orange Bloods, and that's why it took me a second. Someone was like, I don't understand how Pete K is not making over $1 million a year. PK Enterprises LLC. Like there's tax things people do for tax things. So you've got to combine his annual salary, which is what he's getting paid through, into Pete Kwiatkowski, and then what he's getting paid into his LLC. It's math, it's taxes, it's a lot to explain, but any good accountant will have you, when you're making the good money, any good accountant will tell you got to get an LLC to defer some of these tax things. So yes, you've got, so you look at
in total making like 1.5.
So yeah, 1.7.
Okay.
Yeah, 1.7. If you combine, this one and the first one, it's like 1.7, and then he's nearly $2 million a year is what he's going to be making. Pete K. And then Jeff Banks gets a little bit of a bump. Kyle Flood gets a little bit of a bump. But the big thing, is getting the 1 year extension to keep his coordinators together through the next 3 seasons. So that's kind of ends up being the big thing.
It's we're 3 years away from it, but they've got the contractual stuff set up so that Sark would go the first 6 years at Texas without a change at his coordinator positions. Now, look, Banks could get a job. We've seen Kyle Flood's name tossed around a little bit, but not in a way. I don't feel like they've been the absolute leader or a co-leader or even in a top 3, really. They've had their names mentioned. So I think Texas can feel pretty good that, barring a very unique situation, they'll probably be able to keep these guys together for 6 seasons on War.
That's catch. This is great because it gives me a chance to think of my Sunday column. How many people have been fired since, like, under Charlie and then under Tom? Tom, after year 4, fired 7 guys.
Well, we were doing the stories both on offense and defense for a long time, where it was like, this is this guy's 4th coordinator in 4 years.
Yes.
And now, and when Sarkisian and company showed up, they added to that, right? So like a guy like Jordan Whittington, it just felt like every year something was changing. There was, and it didn't seem it was. So that Texas, we're only halfway there. So it's hard to talk too much about what 6 years in would look like when we're only 3 years in. But Kwiatkowski getting the extension's really interesting because Johnny Nansen was just hired to be the linebackers coach. We know that's Sark's boy. We know he was a defensive coordinator at Arizona and had a really successful season there. a year added to his contract, leaving 3. I mean, he's the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of a reward, but also an exclamation mark on that. Like, hey, we're going to hire good people, Sark being the we, but Kwiatkowski is our guy. And I feel like you and I have done a bunch of shows where the theme is Kwiatkowski's not getting enough credit, or this contract says it's his defense and that Sarkisian wants him to continue to be the guy in charge.
Good point. That's an excellent point.
And I think that it really just puts to bed some of the conversations about, is it really his defense? Is Sark really happy with him? Yeah. Would he replace him? And no, like, they've made a priority for him to remain the defensive coordinator. And you know, if he wasn't on the list, I wonder if we would make a big deal about it or not. Maybe we would say, look, man, Banks and Flood are getting extensions. What's up with Kwiatkowski, who's got 2 years left on his deal? But to go ahead and add that year, I just think speaks volumes.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't want to borrow your chef's kiss thing, but I think that's just a tremendously excellent point, because there's always been the rumors, you know, like, well, you know, Gary Patterson's here, and it might just be a matter of time. Catch, we did shows a couple of years ago where people were asking us, what game does Gary Patterson take over as defensive coordinator?
Yes.
Like that was a thing. They were like, and people were like, by week 4, week 6, like when's it Gary Patterson's job? Like that was it. We kept saying, dude, you guys gotta calm down and come off of this. And people are like, no. Okay, so maybe after the season is what you guys are saying. Like they kept doing that. And then last year, it was like Gary Patterson showed up for it. It's like, oh my God, he's here. Like it's going to be Gary at some point. And we kept saying, guys, this is PK's thing. Like you guys are not seeing the forest from the trees here. And then you get the Arizona guy comes in here, and everyone's like, well, it's just going to be a matter of time. And I think what we've been seeing, what it just echoes is that, you know, you and I joke about Banks being Sark's guy. Like, and we have our jokes like, hey, if the war's about to break out, right? And Sark has got a secret bunker that they can survive for the next few years, you know, while the gas and everything's going on. We know Banks is going to be in the bunker, right? We know, like, if he's like, I can only have a few people in here, Jeff gets the call. But it also shows us, honestly, that Pete is also one of the guys. Like, he may not be his boy per se, right? But we know when it comes to, like, who his guys are, who the guys are that he trusts, the guys that he believes in, the guys that he has faith in. We know it's Banks. We know it's Flood. And I think this solidifies that, you know what, when it comes to Sark's guys, Pete K is one of them.
You read my mind. It's a great point. Not to say that I had a great point that I was just, but I think you nailed it. I was thinking the exact same thing, in that he's not one of this. I mean, I'm telling you the exact same thought. He's not his boy necessarily, but he's one of his boys. And it's no small thing that Sarkisian is through 3 seasons and is comfortable for the next 3 hitched to the same guy that got him through this 3. You know, we know Sark is all about loyalty. We know that he likes to keep an inner circle. And Kwiatkowski makes it so that he can just focus on the offensive side of the ball. Sark doesn't have to go sit in defensive meetings for very long if he doesn't want to. He doesn't have to micromanage Kwiatkowski, who, by the way, has been a better recruiter at the defensive coordinator position than a lot of people give credit. Yeah. He had no recruiting reputation when he showed up. His guys are the edge guys, right? So he was involved. He was a point man on the Colin Simmons recruitment, but he wasn't the only guy. Even Banks was involved in that. That was like a staff-led mission. But Ethan Burke, Colton Vasek, guys that were edge guys as recruits that have played at that position so far in their careers, you know, both depending on which service and rankings you look at, either a super blue chip or right on the verge for both of them. he was the point man for those guys. They get Trey Moore in the transfer portal. They probably don't do that if Kwiatkowski, who's going to be his position coach, doesn't do a good job. And look, that was against Alabama. Ohio State was knocking on the door. So he's really doing everything that Sark could ask him to.
Yeah.
And this probably shouldn't be a surprise.
No, not at all. And so, yeah, I mean, now from a recruiting perspective, it again, it shows he feels comfortable not only with him as a coach, but with him as a recruiter as well. I think it's a good point. And so, by the way, there was a super chat that came in a little earlier.
Yeah, I was just about to get to it.
Okay. Where is Choice's contract?
Well, I think this was about the coordinators, special teams, offense, and defense. I think you'll see the rest of the assistants eventually get theirs.
Yeah.
No one other than a coordinator is currently on the list for this particular Board of Regents meeting. I wouldn't be surprised that if the Board of Regents meet again in May or April, if you saw some extensions for assistants. Anwar and I talk about this all the time. Coordinators are a little different than assistants. They're usually working on 2-year deals, occasionally 3-year deals. I'm guessing Choice signed a 3-year deal and he's through 2, right? So it's don't worry. Don't worry about Choice. I think they wanted to take care of these guys. And I'm somewhat reminded of the Bo Davis situation because if Bo Davis comes in, if they match Bo Davis, it changes Kyle Flood, it changes Jeff Banks, and then it may change Kwiatkowski. And one of the things, it's not like Texas was hurting for money, but they made a choice on Bo Davis that they weren't going to match the money. And we can and have and probably will have conversations about, is Kenny Baker an upgrade or a downgrade or even with Bo Davis. But when you look at what's happening from the salary standpoint, I'd have to go back and look at it. Can you put that back up for a second?
Yeah, which one? You talking about the
assistant coaches?
Yeah. Here we go.
If we look at that and Davis is making 1.5, then that's more than Flood after he gets bumps in every season that takes place, because he'll be 1.3 this season. And then if you look at Banks isn't anywhere near 1.5. So you can say, well, they should have given Bo Davis 1.5 and then give Banks and Flood 1.7. It's not our money, right? Yeah. You can take that down now, Anwar. Thank you. Okay, no problem. I think, we can't say you can't make fun of the Aggies for like pissing away money on the Jimbo Fisher deal and then bidding against yourself and raising money for every assistant because you're matching the contract of a guy that you think is really good, but maybe, it was like, if you walked up to Sark and said, hey, we're going to pay Bo Davis more money than any defensive line coach in the country.
Yeah.
He could have said, well, if you're going to give me 1.5 to play with, let me go spend it like this. He ends up going with Kenny Baker. He could have done anything with that job, given the money that he had to play with. But I think, whether you agree with or disagree with it, you can see how that would have impacted everything. And I just don't think they were comfortable with that. And I think when you see the numbers of the coordinators on that screenshot that you put up, it becomes pretty obvious like why they wouldn't have wanted to quite go there. But when Choice gets his deal redone, Anwar, I'm guessing he'll be in that $1 million a year kind of range that Bo Davis was in. Bo Davis was making $1 million. They're not going to pay him that much money. And I think we can probably have a pretty good idea of where that next deal, that extension for Choice will look like.
Yeah. So here's going to be my parting shot on this one, Catch. I think the difference between Sark's salary and the coordinator's salary is that Texas is paying for the results. Other programs are paying for results that they hope will eventually come. right? So if you're Texas, you feel good paying a guy for what he's done, where these other programs catch, you got to pay DeBoer on what you hope he will be able to do at Texas, at Alabama. You don't know if he's going to duplicate that or have that success, right? It's the same way that A&M was paying Jimbo for what they hoped he might be able to accomplish at A&M. That never happened. If you're Texas, the difference is this is the reward for being in the playoffs. Not everybody else is hoping to be there, and they're paying guys a whole lot of money because they hope those guys will be there. Texas is rewarding guys because they were there, and I think that's the huge difference. I think you can feel a whole lot better knowing I'm paying guys because I've already seen the results, as opposed to paying guys hoping that you may obtain the results. I think it's a big difference, and that's the last thing I would say.
And I guess my last point would be just to piggyback off of that. They've been getting a steal for Sarkisian previously. Now, yes, he goes 5-7 in year one, and I promise you, Anwar and I will never try to put lipstick in a wig on that pig. It was not pretty. It was ugly. But in the totality of building the program from a recruiting standpoint, a culture standpoint, putting flagpoles down in states of California and Florida and Arizona, and recruiting being completely diversified in a way that it probably never has, except for maybe year one under old Charlie, when Charlie was like, I'm going to go national. And everybody said, no, you're not. And he said, okay. But nobody's quite doing that with Sarkisian. And maybe that's because everybody realizes the in-state thing's more complicated than maybe it was a decade ago when Charlie showed up. But the bottom line is they've got a top 5 football program in America right now.
Yeah.
And they've been paying top 40, top 50 salary for that.
Yeah.
But even now, right? So now they no longer get the sweetheart of a deal. They're not paying crazy money. They're paying what Sark has earned, but they haven't made him higher than Kirby. And I think, Kirby would probably want a raise himself. Sexton's got to be real careful when you control all of the coaches, but I think that from a coordinator standpoint, there's nothing crazy. None of those guys are making $2 million a year. And we do live in a world in college football right now where that is a threshold that has been met. So I think it's a lot of money, but I still feel like Texas can feel good, the institution, about the contracts that they're giving out. Nobody across the country is going to judge any of these deals and say, how does Texas sleep at night? Oh, he clutched my pearls. The college football is like the NFL. They get to keep it just in the region where nobody will make too big of a stink about it. They didn't break barriers, and that's always really important for Texas. They don't want to be seen as the ones always creating these new thresholds. In this case, they came in slightly lower at the very elite of the elite, and I think everybody can walk out of this feeling like a winner. All right, we'll wrap this thing up. Guys, make sure you click the thumbs up button. Smash it. Come on now. By the way, I haven't looked in Mark. There's always got to be somebody nitpicking Anwar, even on a Saturday. I didn't say I was making a 20-second statement. I don't think it was quite 5 minutes, but hey, this thing's going to be wrapped up in less than 30 minutes. When have Anwar and I ever done anything under 30 minutes? So on that note, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, get notifications. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in, whether you're live or watching later, for this little breaking news edition of Orange Bloods Live for Jeff Ketchum and Anwar Richardson, who's going to go back to the Arsenal game, which they're winning 3-0.
Oh, they got scored another goal? I've left at 2-0.
You can just relax. That one's all put to bed. We'll see you guys on Monday, unless there's more breaking news. Later.